Hey, so I wanted to do a video at the suggestion of Patter Piper. I don't know everybody's first names. And I also want to, in that video, mention Bull Moose and Jess Pipin. I really appreciate that people are talking about some of the trucking stuff. And Bull Moose Piper had a fantastic point of view that there's not much in our lives that don't come from trucking, and I want to go into some of my background on that. For a little over 10 years, I worked in the oil field. I worked for Halliburton and all kinds of companies, service companies. And I drove a CDL. I had to, I had my Class A. I had hazmat tankers. I had the ATF endorsement for explosives and radiation and all the rest of that. I've driven explosive loads. I've driven radioactive loads. I've driven oversized loads that were so oversized we had to follow permitted routes. I've driven on the East Coast. I've driven on the West Coast. I've driven up north, everywhere in the U.S. except for Alaska. If there's an oil well there, I was probably there. The gripes that most truckers, CDL drivers, because Bull Moose had a great point. People confuse pickup truck drivers with CDL drivers, and even your school bus drivers are CDL drivers, and they have a lot to put up with, and that's not just everybody's kids acting like rules don't matter, but some of the stuff that I had to do was stuff that a lot of CDL drivers won't do. I've taken 80,000-pound loads off-road through 2 feet of mud. I've chained up in that 2 feet of mud. I have wenched tractor trailers backwards up a mountainside and had to take oversized loads up roads where the only piece of safety advice for that road for taking a semi was if you feel any kind of hesitation in your tires, don't buckle up and bail out the door. That truck is worth less than you are. And companies only tell you that when they pay for the life insurance bill, and that's Halliburton. I tons of safety accommodations, but there's nothing scarier than being behind that wheel. But at the very same time, there's a lot of joy in it. There are things about driving that I have always enjoyed and probably will always miss. I gave up my CDL recently. I've been working in the IT field in one role or another for the last 10 years. So, one, it wasn't going to be practical for me to keep. Slow-mo Randy, I know that you also were involved in that. Sorry, that just came to mind. But you're choosing to keep your CDL, which is awesome. But I'm a diabetic, and anybody who's a over-the-road driver knows the extra restrictions and loopholes and rules that any diabetic has to follow. And that got to be really stressful and really, really hard for me and unjustified given my career change. I'm no longer working 90 hours, 100 hours a week. I'm getting more than 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. Something that a lot of people don't know when they zip around trucks is not just the braking distance, but the condition of those trucks matters a lot. Oil-filled trucks are almost never in good condition. They drive in rough terrain all the time. They almost never see the shop. Any repairs that happen in the field and when the truck is broken. You typically have undereducated, underexperienced guys behind the wheel and a family of 4 in their, Honda Accord will get in front of you and assume that you can stop in, let's say they're gracious and give you 3 car lengths. But if you have a tanker behind you with something that's called surge, and that's where the sloshing effect that you see, like you have a cup and you're heading down the road, and when you stop, you see that liquid come up your cup, right? Now you have to amplify that effect and give it length, give it momentum, and take all that mass and have it push your brakes and then push you back. And if there's an ounce of snow or ice on the road, that adds to it. If there's water and that truck doesn't have good tires, you can start hydroplaning. I've been through almost all of that. I've had brakes catch fire. I've had airlines blow and lock up the brake line, or lock up the brakes as I'm going down the road. I actually had a differential explode once on an experimental vehicle. It was an ex-military vehicle turned into a pump service truck for Halliburton. There's a lot to that. But also, in reflection, a lot of you guys tied in the, sorry, you'll have to give me a second. I had to write all this down because I can't remember everything. To Uncle Willie's question about being scared to death, none of those things were the scariest thing I ever did. As human beings, we tend to push the things that have scared us the most out of our mind, because that is actually a survival tactic to be able to progress with life. There's things that you absolutely have to do, and it, like, childbirth is incredible, and every woman who goes through it, yes, awesome. I could not do that.
There's plenty of ways.
But your brain overrides that. It overrides all that pain and all the rest of it. But the scariest thing I ever went through, which is far scarier than anything I've gone through with the trucks, or skidding out on black ice or hydroplaning. My first car, I hydroplaned in the middle of traffic, approaching a busy intersection. 81 El Camino, not that good in 3 inches of rain. I was stacking hay. I was 15 years old, and was on top of a stack that was about 2 stories tall. We were moving small bales by hand. Was getting paid to do it, and a couple of the bales below broke. The twine broke and gave way, and I fell between the 2 stacks. We had another stack that was already finished, and we were about here. And when I fell into this gap that was about 1 person wide. And my feet caught other bales, and they got whipped out from under me and up towards my head, and I landed directly on my tailbone. I shattered that, which we didn't find out till later. But I went blind for a while. I knew I hit the ground, but I swore my eyes were open, but I couldn't see anything. And eventually, sight started to come back, and I started to see things in black and white, and then color came back later. That was far scarier to me than anything I've been through driving a truck. But I could totally see why, all the really close truck accidents were super scary for folks. But when I went blind for that moment, for a second, I thought I had died. I had a sense of fear like I had never experienced. And I don't know if the word is, it's not humbling. I'm not finding the word, but so when my brother walked me over, I couldn't see anything. He walked me over to my dad's truck. My dad was laughing. He thought it was pretty funny. He didn't know how badly I was hurt or that I couldn't see. And yeah, that's one I won't forget. But now driving a truck, probably the best part of that oil field career. I had coworkers get blown to shreds with pieces of equipment that blew apart, pieces of their legs and whatnot. I'd been covered in second and third degree burns from different chemicals I'd been exposed to. Got hit in the face with hydrochloric acid. I have a bald spot under my beard that takes forever to grow in. If I trim it too short, it's uneven. But we had a contractor when a piece of equipment exploded. He had just said goodnight to his daughter, and he was done with his task for the evening, but he couldn't leave. And he didn't leave that site alive. The piece of the equipment went through him. And they tried to argue against shutting the site down. Those things scar you more than anything behind a wheel. But yeah, trucking. Patter Piper, you wanted me to weigh in on this, and Katie's here being supportive, but that's what I have to weigh in on, because if we're talking about the whole subject of being scared, yeah, there's scarier things than what a truck can do to you. The possibility of all the things that ran through my head as a teenager in that scenario. That's probably the scariest thing I'd ever been through, and I have been through a lot. Yeah, but you guys take from that what you will.